Nice and low, but he's not trailing. His cohorts have been off to the south today. I came out here just after sunrise. There was one lone trail. One lone trail. And now they've just continued to fly it and fly it. You can see them off on the horizon here. See, they're doing something. Where is he? I'm sure we can see him in the viewfinder. I just can't see him with my eyes. In and out, in and out. So, we've got the time lapse running on in this direction. So we'll see how this mess either propagates this way or continues just moving on to the east and southeast. There's going to be a big chemtrail weekend across the southwest, probably all the way from Arizona through California, and then it's a good distance out into the Pacific. So little bits of snow on our mountains. Otherwise, it's a relatively quiet morning. But that was the first jet I've heard, the one we just saw. So we'll see how that. There's something just being flown through. Fresh guy. Anyway, sure we'll see some big old marking ones overhead later on this afternoon. I'm zoomed away. See that trail just kind of glowing behind him. It's one of those serious ones. That probably, if you're underneath it, it's got all those colors, and he's leaving the full wingspan delivery. Those are the ones that you just kind of shake your head and wonder, why doesn't everybody see these, and why haven't they seen them? See, once he leaves the cirrus shield, kind of shuts off. That's what all of this cloud is that's previous debris from trail. And you can see how he's going right through the clouds. And he is on an ascent and then off. Yep. Off. Done. Finito. And so then you see the plane cruising over, not leaving anything behind. You're like, oh, that's just a regular plane. Crap. Not so. You just have more and more people watching him, so they have to be a little more discreet and precise in where they leave their trails on. But we'll see these clouds extend out to at least this point, as the atmosphere has now been seeded with condensation nuclei to draw it in. So now he's just trudging off to the east, and who knows, he might be turning around and headed back into the clouds. That happens often. And for all we know, the plane we just saw passing overhead might be doing one of those. He'll come back around, come in, and then do a stripe, does a loop, comes back, and they just do this circuit. This circuit. I'm hearing another plane. Go see if I can find him. There he is. Just cruising off to his next assignment. And they see more and more of these business-sized jets where their payloads are between 1,000 and 2,000 pounds. But they've got incredibly long ranges where they can stay airborne for 8 hours plus. And if they're just very particular and precise about where they're leaving their cargo, then it's enough. It's enough. It's enough of an asset to have in the air for these guys. You don't need any more than that. And there's the trail. Continues to just threading right to that leading edge of the cirrus. It's funny how the cirrus coming. It's really this right angle. It's like the edge of a book with the binder, with the spine of the book being pushed along in the atmosphere, and these trails mark where that spine is. And after the front or that spine moves across, then you see the ice crystals, the particulate fallout. I'm time-lapsing off in this direction, so I'm not going to catch that. Look at these clouds. They look smeared. I mean, seriously smeared. Look how the tails are just pulled out of them. They look smeared. The front end looks like a cube. There's something going on there. Back here we got a trail. A little brighter on this side. Nice gap here. And then it continues to undulate in the wind. And that's information for these guys. I was hearing a plane when I stepped out, but I wasn't able to locate it visually. But it's pretty quiet. Love these hooks that come off the end of the cumulus. You'll see that a lot. As a cloud kind of like extends a tongue, and then it just develops further. It'll end up coming off the tail end of this in a matter of time. It happens quickly. Clouds aren't bubbling anymore. There's another energy at work here. Kind of as expected, they're getting a little closer to us. This guy had to go right through that mark. So he's flying at this cloud altitude, and then the trail kind of fades off. And all these then like fall streak like cirrus things are coming our way. And I was just noticing one coming in from the east. He's kind of with a gentle trail, if you will. So we can't push him before we lose him and get his paint scheme. Looks like a 767. But again, he's just low. So we'll see if this little bitty trail becomes something more substantial as he begins to impact the tip of this guy. We'll know in a minute. But he's definitely moving slow. The blue tail. Let's see what he does with it. Got another one that's come in and working through this other formation. Little plane under the clouds, leaving a mark. There the trail goes on again. He's hitting that mark right there. And I'll see how his trail just glows and glows, grows and grows. Little coloration from the sun, like a sunbow. This is certainly an area they're interested in. Another plane looks like his trail is staying muted. So we'll see how they'll deform in a bit. Good old Southwest. Day and night they fly these trails. Day and bloody night. There's a bump on that tail. Low and slow. There's lots of little planes today. Lots of little planes flying around. Not much in the way of clouds. There's my rain gauge. Not much happening. A little activity, a little tick come on through here. A couple of different cloud types showing up, and this is often the case when we kind of get compression zones where we get these like little stacked up waves. A little something happening here as towering cumulus or thunderheads begin to develop. Off this one, kind of a square edge, up and over, so another at a right angle. And again, earlier, it isn't 5 minutes. This whole zone was filled in with clouds like this, and so it's changing shape very quickly. Step out of the road here for just a sec. So I got the sun up here. What I'm looking at is the top of this cloud, marked perfectly with a trail. Right at that level. The trail ended there at that point. And now in this indent here behind this little cloud, it's there's a cube cut out or a square cut out, and then the trail begins and continues along the top of this. Well, actually, it's this deck that's fading in segments as it steps farther off into the southwest and into the distance. Today the trails for a time, you can see how the little ice crystals are weeping out, precipitate. They were straight behind the clouds. The clouds are literally being just driven along in mass and very, very quickly. And the crystals were just smeared. There was no descent whatsoever, like we see here. And then there's kind of a sharp bend right here, and then it trails a little more horizontal to the horizon. Another shape here. Again, with a hole where it all kind of churns out of. So I'm going to take the dogs on a walk. We'll see what we can't get looked at here in a bit as we come up on sunset. Just want to share this shortly. Trail comes across this older one, this guy here. So he comes across right at the lift in the old trail, and then kiss right at the leading edge of the anvil of this thunderhead. They use these things. They use these things to guide how big the storms will get, where they'll go, and at what speed. Let's watch how this deforms. Here's the wider shot with the chemtrail that went in right in here. We've had all kinds of other cubes with a burst on one corner. I've had another cloud here with this indent here, with this jet of clouds coming out of the front. It's just all of this geometry inside of these clouds. This is just not something you're gonna get when you're in something that lacks some design. There's absolutely some design here. Here's the trail over the lip, gap, and now the part of it that faded into the thunderhead has faded away. But what is new is this top segment, this right here. I don't recall that being there. And when it gets hairy like that, especially when you have an angle in here, you can see the other half of the cloud continues out below. You got all of this geometry, these spokes. It's like we have a central radial or center point here, and then the cloud rotates and spins around it. On one part of it you've got rain, and the other part is an updraft, or is the updraft. Let's see. All kinds of shapes, all kinds of geometric resonances in these guys. And some thunderheads to the north. Right, so just had a trail show up. You can see it in here. Come on through the trees. Pop out this other side. It'll still be illuminated by the sun. Our sun angle's not quite that low. You can see this fall streak. And all that coming out of it, all that crystallization. And here's our plane. Now he's not trailing. Good old US Air. We know you guys have had to bite the bullet to participate in this program. I wouldn't expect that anybody does it willingly. So the question is, will he turn on the trail? Or will he just kind of cruise on through this? Getting part or end numbers would be great, but you just can't do it with these optics. Need something else. Something with a little more of a lens. But he's slow. He's really slow. There's our fall streak. In fact, he's going, you can see this square here. He's gonna go, well, he's here. Now I hear him. Maybe there's another one going on. And back to the east, there's another one. This was the US airplane we just saw. And this is a young one. Fresh guy. See if he must be off as well. So he's going to go essentially overhead, so I can track him fairly easily. Here he comes out of the top of the cloud. Blue belly, blue body. It's like they turn off the trail. Once they get done, they mark their spot. Time to move on. I lost him for a minute. This is what he was interested in. It's the middle of this. You can see the two eyes, the two holes. Actually, there's three right now. That's so often their target. I've seen that many times. And then he'll be off to the thunderhead. Kind of see how its integrity isn't all that bad. It still looks healthy on this extent. There's just not a lot of rain coming out of it. There's not a lot of rain. See him? Oh, try to focus on a cloud. That's not going to work. Maybe I've lost him. I still hear him. In any case. See these slopes? We've got level. We've got the camera on the level. You can see these slopes, especially right in through here. And what I see of these trail planes, they'll leave a mark denoting the level, and then they'll also be on descent or on ascent, and will outline the slope that the resonance will take, and hence the cloud will form too. I can see that especially when they're working the lenticular clouds. Something else that's curious is this little layer, this little skinny thing on top. It's not that's a recent addition to our weather, and then you can see the fall streak phenomena coming in back here. But that slope is what's interesting. Then up in here, just notice the churning. It's almost like we're seeing mammatus, you know, the lumpy thunderhead clouds associated. I can see those in Cirrus, and I've seen them more often lately than before. But kind of look for that kind of turbulence. In fact, you can see the outline of the turbulence. It comes to right there. You see that there's like a little dark shock on this leading edge right here, where this emanates from. Here's a loud one. A good Allegiant. He's low. Who's really on board's my question. Who's really flying these planes? Why are they 15,000 feet below where they're supposed to be? Why are they not in their flight patterns? You know, what are they doing investigating other contrails, other chemtrails? What are they doing flying through these, oh, here comes the trail. Giddy up. You know, what the fuck? It's just a little spot. Just a little bitty trail. I bet he'll do more as he heads into that thunderhead. But see, this is the deception. They're not always trailing. The chemtrail planes are not always trailing. They're going from spot to spot to spot. And just because it's a little trail doesn't mean it's a contrail. We got to get that through people's heads. There's just, you know, we're coming up on 40 years into this program. So much of the stuff on the net says, you know, started in the mid-90s. That's crap. That's crap. It's been around a hell of a lot longer than that. So is this invasion of Earth. Yeah, we're coming up in the last rays of sunshine. So we'll see if he doesn't leave a mark. Probably over the top of this business that's forming. This is all fairly recently manifest. Alright, if that's it, then so much for Friday, September 28, 2012. And we'll have a look at satellite on the computer here and see what else is going on before we close this thing down. All right, everybody, keep looking up. And here's that Allegiant Air flight. There's its trail right there. So it continued off the edge of that thunderstorm. So there it is. I kind of thought they might. There it is. I was just testing to see what I could get with in the dark. Just had a heavy, like a 747 fly over, and it left this trail here. You can just barely see in the light. Let me see if I can bias up a little bit. So we get car light. This isn't going to be a problem. But we're just getting a myriad of trails. Some overhead. We just had 3 big planes come through just shortly. So something's happening up on the mountain. Something's coming together. Alright, I'll be curious to see in Final Cut how this looks. Let's start out this morning, and we're going to look up into the Canadian prairies in particular, North Dakota, Montana. We've got Manitoba, Ontario, and then Saskatchewan just out to the west, and just laced with trails as they head out into the Arctic. And the flow of the jet stream was up and in this direction, and we'll see that on. In fact, let's just swing to the other monitor. Come on in here, and you'll see the trails over the course of the day, all in through here, all of this. This was an intense day across central Canada, as we had a low pressure in here, and then all of this stuff folding into what should just be a gorgeous late September or early October-like weather, but it just laced with this crap. And so they were profoundly engineering the middle part of Canada today. Numerous trails were abundant earlier today as we look across the southeastern states. We'll pop over to the visible imagery for that. In fact, let's come back over to this screen, and you can see the trails across Lake Winnipeg extending on thick as you get into Ontario earlier this morning. So it apparently was just an event that was worthy of their attention and diverting a lot of flies, or just employing a lot of flights off in that direction. Some crazy cirrus clouds that got rather thick across northeastern Kansas, from Lawrence to St. Joseph on up into Omaha area. And you know how I like to point out holes. And then there's other little holes in here as well. Hole here, like right here and right here. We're seeing all of this embedded geometry inside this weather. And it's just, there's another pair of holes. Isn't that curious? And it just seems like so much of the weather is, well, focused around these holes in the middle of the cloud deck, and they make it all the way to the ground. So you can get some breaks in the clouds, actually see some blue sky through these things. We pop out to the leading edge of the storm, and all the trails that cross northeast Texas, northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, back into Mississippi and Alabama. We'll pop out and then come in a little bit closer, and you can see how thick they were through Alabama and over into Georgia. And I think they're probably just continued off in that direction over the course of the day. And then here's our holes again inside the clouds across the Carolina. Here's another pair of holes. There's 3 of them there. And so you're using geometry, and it just happens to be that you can run these trails right through this white spot where this little bit of a cirrus then begins to branch off on either side. And we have a trail that comes across right in those locations. So these trails are highly interested in very, very small scale events that we could barely discern on the satellite imagery. But when you're underneath that and looking at it, you notice. But then when you put the clouds in motion and do time lapse, you're like, bloody hell, how did I not see this? And one of these days we'll have weathermen all across the country saying, bloody hell, how did I not see this? All these crazy conspiracy nuts were right. And That day is coming. Get up into Quebec. Look at these long trails. And then this other one, right in through here, this guy right here, you can see how it went right through this opening, kind of hit the very southern extent of this side of the trail, and then through this southwest opening, and then popped out this other side. But when you're using holes to anchor weather events, then there's this resonance geometry that has to be maintained. And here, even here, this thunderstorm complex, we have these subsidence holes. There's a pair over Virginia. So we'll look out west, and then this was all the clouds and the moisture across Texas, Oklahoma. I'll zoom out so you get the bigger picture. It's just a lot of moisture, and then we've had a tropical storm on the southern end of this, feeding that moisture in. So it was like the monsoon got a bit of a respite and was able to come on back here and get some rain into these folks, as it was absolutely needed. But still, we have these anchoring holes as we get out towards the western edge of it. And I'm in this valley here, kind of about right in here. So we had some clouds behind the mountains, and some cirrus clouds and some contrails as they were engineering this very northern edge of the storm. And I had the time lapse on this earlier today, but I really thought we might have a little more propagate up this way, but that just did not happen. So I was close, but really did not have a lot of active weather here in the valley today. Move on out west, and I had some incredible trailing going on out here. Yesterday there was one spot, and they would run trails in this star formation, and then of course the atmosphere would turn, and they would just keep running planes right on through it. It was amazing, and I kind of kicked myself for not getting the room quiet, because we had a house full of people here yesterday, and so I didn't feel comfortable sitting down and doing a little weather discussion. I kind of get private about those things. But the west, let's just stop into the wider view, back to the water vapor imagery, and you can see some of the trails, coming ashore, and then some on the southern edge, just little guys. And this is an event that I'm watching for California. And again, it's wholly engineered, like it all is these days. But I think this is going to be a very fascinating thing. We'll end up with a high folding over. Let me go to the, let me see if I can't get to the GFS, which is going to be our global forecast system. And that's Thursday, Friday, so let's update this. And we've got a ridge in place and a deep low over Alaska. Their lows this morning were 20s and 30s, so kind of chilly. Another impulse rolling through Hudson Bay. But here's that baggy trough down here, and all the moisture streaming into Texas. Let's jump ahead 24 hours. And we see the storm in Alaska deepen up a little bit, and this storm kind of just sits off of California with the high here. In fact, this high is going to muscle in and keep this guy trapped back off the coast of California. So he's going to sit there and just kind of pinwheel. This high gets stronger, nosing into Oregon and Northern California. This low kind of gets stuck because this ends up blocking the flow. We'll have a very large trough with lots of wiggle room for this guy. So probably a thunderstormy weekend from probably Georgia back across Mississippi, and then the storm gets a little bit stronger. So there could actually be some severe weather, I would anticipate, as we get to either Sunday night across Texas and Monday across Alabama, Georgia, into Tennessee. That's a very real possibility. But then this low still sits off California. This high muscles in and essentially cups it and keeps it from moving inland. We get a storm, the one out in the Pacific, makes it over this ridge and then begins to squish it. This high begins to split, and this low here is this trough over the mid-Mississippi Valley. In fact, the lower Mississippi Valley sharpens up. So this is a large event. This is very large, and there's ample moisture, strong Atlantic or Bermuda high sitting off in here. And so this could be some very heavy rains along the slow-moving front through the Ohio Valley. So I would kind of be aware of that for the first part of the next week, of some heavy rains there. And then this is fall. This is decidedly a fall event coming in from Canada. And that could put some snow down into middle Manitoba, maybe even outside of Winnipeg or some of these hills closer to Hudson Bay. Could see some fresh snow, but this is absolutely going to be the very real potential for a severe weather event. as we get into Wednesday night and certainly into Thursday, the whole while this storm just sits off California. So I'll be curious to see how the chemtrails on the leading edge of this impact the coastal areas, to see how much of that is visible or isn't. And I'd really like to have some eyes on the ground. Come back to the water vapor here, and here's that plume of moisture still coming in presently from Mexico across a large width of the southern U.S. I just want to say thanks to everybody for watching these videos and being as interested in the skies and the weather as I am. And our hearts go out to those guys in Europe who just can't get access to this kind of information. I'm just watching Middle Canada as they were just hammered with trails. I got to figure out what the goal of all this was, and that may not become manifest for a couple of days. But if there's pictures from Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Calgary, not so much Calgary, Lethbridge, those areas, I'd be fascinated to see just how ugly it was up there today. All right, everybody, I'm going to get this thing in Final Cut, and we'll call it good. All right, everybody, take care. Keep looking up.